Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very empowering show coming right up with special guest Carrie Morgridge, and she's here today to share with us her new book, Spirit of the Trail, A Journey to Fulfillment Along the Continental Divide. Now, Carrie serves as Vice President and Chief Disruptor of the Morgridge Family Foundation. The mission of the foundation is to invest in transformative gifts for educators and youth. Carrie is an award-winning author of Every Gift Matters, How Your Passion Can Change the World. Carrie and her husband John created the Student Support Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization that inspires youth philanthropy. For the past decade, they have celebrated and advanced the educator profession by creating MindSpark Learning, which is focused on empowering educators to tackle the most challenging conditions in their schools through design thinking and other strategies. So let's welcome to the show, Carrie Morgridge.
Thank you, Marianne. It's great to be here.
What a pleasure it is to have you here. My goodness, what a great book. I mean, it's play by play the entire trip. And I'm sure when people pick this up, they get this real sense that they're on the trail with you.
That was the entire goal, because probably not all of your listeners or all of even my friends are probably going to bike across the country in their lifetime. So I started blogging every day, and then it just made sense to bring people along the journey with us. So the Spirit of the Trail is about a couple, which is John, my husband, and I, and we biked across America on a mountain bike unsupported.
Well, and so what inspired this trip to take place?
So I had always been very athletic. In fact, I had done 9 Ironmans before I decided to bike across the country. And then what happened is I might have overdone it a little bit, and I ran so much all of my life that I actually ended up having to get my back fused so I can never run again. So I had been in bed for a little bit in recovery, and then I had gained some weight, and I just wasn't feeling great about myself, and I needed to get a jump start. So I went to my husband, and I asked him if I could go to fat camp. You know, if I could just go away for 2 weeks, get a jump start, and come back. And he said, I have always wanted to do something with you, and it's kind of been my secret for a long time. So for our 25th wedding anniversary, my husband and I made the decision to bike across the country on a mountain bike.
Now, were you doing a lot of mountain biking before then, or is this something you picked up just so you can start training for this trip?
So I'm really lucky. I live part-time in the state of Colorado, and I would pretty much say that I had become an extreme mountain biker. Our home is close to Steamboat Springs, Colorado, and we spend the summer there. And I want to say I mountain bike 5 to 6 days a week, going up and down hills. I don't do the chairlift thing like a lot of people do. I grind it up and I float it down, and I absolutely love mountain biking. So mountain biking was in my blood, and so that made it more palpable. But after doing the bike ride, I can tell you, you don't have to be an extreme mountain biker to bike the Great Divide mountain bike route. You just have to have endurance, and you have to commit.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I think, especially when you look at training in Colorado, there's a lot of advantages that come to that. With that, one is the altitude.
Yeah, altitude was a huge advantage. So when we did all of our training in the Steamboat area, which actually ended up being on the Great Divide mountain bike route, and we never knew it until we got our maps. And so we started actually training on the route. And Colorado is one of the harder, more mountainous states. Montana, we never got over 5,000 feet in elevation. And that made a huge difference, honestly. So it was a huge advantage to train in Colorado.
Well, there's a reason that they have one of the Olympic training sites is in Colorado, is because, it's a whole new thing when you train in altitude. as opposed to if you're, training at sea level. And so it's good to get your body to adjust to that. Well, and so how long did because you're this ultra athlete, did it really take you a long time to do do the training for this trip, or you guys were just like ready to go in a week?
No. We were not ready to go. In fact, I was still working full time. And then I really realized I had to train just like Ironman. You have to train for a full Ironman. You have to train about a year out. You just kind of train for base, and then about 13 weeks out, you really hit it hard. So in the Great Divide Mountain Bike Route, we were training down in Florida, but that's flatland and on a different type of bike. So when we got to Colorado, I was working full time and training 7 to 8 hours a day on our new mountain bikes that we bought and had designed specifically for this trail. So we had 21 days of training for 650 miles. We got all the kinks out. We, tested how much water we need and how much food we need. We went on lunch adventures. We went on dinner adventures. We trained at night. We trained early morning because we wanted to get all the senses of what would our muscles feel like. And then I refused to give up those 650 miles. So the day we started the trail, I started with 650 miles on my cyclometer because I wasn't giving those up. So we actually ended up, the trail is only 2,800, but we biked 3,400 miles total. And that's including my training miles and the adventure of the bike route.
Okay, I think I heard you say only when you mentioned the mileage. Only 2,774 miles.
Yeah, only. So if only is in your repertoire, then I think the Great Divide Mountain Bike Route is for you. But the other thing that is just so important is, for anything you do in life, how do you eat the elephant? And it's honestly one bite at a time. And there were days where John and we mapped out how far we wanted to go, and then we had to step that backwards and say, okay, let's just make it to 10 o'clock to snack. Let's just make it till noon to lunch. Let's just make it till 3 to snack. Let's just make it till 5 o'clock till we get our last snack before we actually get dinner. And by the way, it's not really a gourmet trip, so I don't want to discourage people from going, but like dinner would be a can of soup and either a bagel or a tortilla. So it wasn't like we were getting these huge gourmet meals along the route as well. I tried my best. And, every time we got a fresh avocado or a fresh piece of fruit, it was a true treat.
Well, it's interesting because, in your book you talk about when people, your family saw you, they were like, wow, you guys have lost so much weight. And it's just because of the intense, mileage that you guys were doing. I mean, this is an intense trip.
It can be intense. If I were to do it again, I might take off 10 miles a day. We averaged 60 miles a day. But 3 days where we only went 30 miles really messed up the averages. So we were kind of doing 70 to 75 miles a day, and I really wish we would have done more like 50. I think, but we're so competitive. We were following this book by the McCoys, and they had done the route in 70 days or 60 days. So John and I were determined to beat them and beat their times, and so we did it in 46 days. I would probably add 4 more days to that, kind of slow it down just a touch. But we also had another goal, and I think your listeners can appreciate this. We did pitch a tent when necessary, but we really shot for hitting the hotel. Mm-hmm. And one of the days we only biked 30 or 40 miles was because the hotel in Butte, Montana, we came upon it at 2 o'clock. And so the decision was bike in 100-degree weather or stop in Butte, Montana, do laundry, get real food, maybe a glass of wine, and sleep in a real bed. So we took the obvious choice and slept in a real bed.
I think most people go for that option too. Looking at that and saying, "Gosh, okay, we've arrived early," but there's something to be said about being able to take a shower, be in your own bed, and not worry about things like grizzly bears, because you guys were in grizzly bear country for some time.
We were, and John had this saying right off the bat. The very first morning, when I'll never forget leaving the trailhead. It's right behind the Fairmont in Banff, Canada, and it immediately felt like bear country, and you could sense that there was a bear because there was moss. It was mossy, it was rainy, and the river was on one side, and we know that the river was just loaded with salmon, and it was summertime. So John said, "Hey-o, hey-o," and then he'd ring his bell. Because what we read about how not to get eaten by a grizzly bear was the more human presence you had, the more that your chances of not getting attacked. It's actually when you come upon a grizzly and surprise the mama, and she's got her two cubs, maybe the cubs are on one side of the trail and the mama's on the other side, that's when you can get into some real trouble. So yeah. So we did hey-o. And then when we got, I have to say on the other spectrum, when we got closer to Mexico, we were honestly really fearful for the unknown. And I could tell all your listeners now looking back, and it's one thing I really do appreciate sharing, that the humans on the trail were extraordinary kind, extraordinarily generous. And we were at first fearful of our human friends. You know, maybe they'd want to steal something from us. We just weren't sure. And it was 100% opposite. And as we got closer to Mexico, Border Patrol was more and more and more apparent. So what I was so afraid of, and John was really afraid for my safety, and his own, of course, but he always had put me first, is that we felt safer and safer the closer we got to Mexico because the United States government actually does a really great job at Border Patrol.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, it's interesting because when you're meeting people on the trail, you don't know them, you know, because there's lots of hunters out there and, you know, just people who live in the wilderness. So, you know, you just never know what you're going to come across.
One of my favorite stories was, again, it's just day one in Banff, Canada, and we think we're in the middle of nowhere, but apparently we're going through a trailhead where there's people again. So we had biked for 2 or 3 hours. We hadn't seen one person. We hadn't seen much wilderness, but the views were spectacular. And all of a sudden I see a 4-year-old with a Superman shirt on. And you kind of do a double take. You're like, where the heck did Superman come from? And then we could see, he had run slightly ahead of his parents, and we could see his parents. And then we got to the parking lot. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now. So we're back with human. So the cool thing about being on the Great Divide mountain bike route is that sometimes you are so remote and so isolated, you have almost no idea where you're at. And then you come across another person that you haven't seen in hours, and it takes your mind a few minutes to adjust, to be quite honest. You're like, okay, I'm back in civilization. So it was really fun and challenging, mentally challenging in Wyoming, going through the Great Basin. We almost didn't see people for 2 to 3 days. Yeah. It gets eerie after a while, believe it or not.
Well, and, you know, and going with your husband, a lot of people, you know, would probably say, you know, I could probably do like 4 or 5 days with my spouse before we get on each other's nerves. I mean, you guys were out there for some time.
You know, it ended up being a love story. And my assistant, John Farnham, he wanted me to write this as a love story. And because once I got unplugged, once we got on the trail, I realized all the nice things my husband does for me on a day-to-day basis. And I can tell you, at the end of the bike ride, we were never as close in our 25 years of marriage as we were at the end of 46 days together. And you think it would be the opposite. But so I really try now to not be as busy, not be so into my own little world and doing my own thing that I forget to notice all the nice things that he does for me. And I made a vow at the end, you know, what are you going to do next? And part of what I'm going to do next was actually to slow down a little bit and enjoy life a little bit more.
Oh, isn't that beautiful? I mean, I think a lot of people want to have that kind of connection and reconnection, maybe, you know, with their spouse or friends or, just life. And to be able to come away from a trip and feel that, I mean, that's pretty astonishing.
So that you don't have to you don't have to bike 2,700 miles to do that, even though that's what it took for me. But I will tell you, this is so important, is I am a very structured and organized calendar girl. So every quarter I book a full week off with just my husband. I actually specifically book time just to be alone with him. So I think you have to look at who you are and whatever it takes to get you to your end goal. And for me, it's getting it in the calendar and really sticking to it. And believe it or not, it's been 2 years since I've done the Great Divide Mountain Bike route, and I have taken off once a quarter. I take off a week with John since that bike ride.
That is it is a love story, You guys have that deep connection, not just with the nature that was surrounding you on the trip and the trail, but now with each other in a very, it sounds like in a very deep way.
We do, and part of it is sharing it. That's why I think the book became so important to me and became so important to John, is, how do we share what we went through? And then at the same time, encourage people to do their own thing. Even if you just get out, Adventure Cycling Association, which is where we bought the map, they have just weekend getaways. You can almost go anywhere, USA, weekend getaway, and do a bike. There's a bike ride for every person. And don't stay in a tent if you're not a tent person. Stay in a hotel. There's plenty of that too. I think the point is about maybe getting a little more unplugged, taking some time for yourself, and really spending quality time with somebody that you really deeply care about.
Oh, I love that. Absolutely love that. Well, and so for our listeners that are kind of going, gosh, how did they manage all of this? I mean, like, how heavy was your bike? I mean, how much stuff did you guys have in your bike? Because you're staying at hotels for the most part.
Well, we only stayed in a hotel about 50% of the time. So that means I had to have my tent, my gear, my water, my food, my clothes, everything that I possibly needed had to be on the bike. Even my cell phone charger. So our bike, all in all, and especially on loaded up days with water, because certain days you didn't get water for 1 or 2 days. So I was packing about 95 pounds on my bike, with my bike included, and my husband was packing about 110 pounds. And that included our water and our food and our tent and so on. So, and then John and I split the tent up. So I carried certain parts of the tent and he carried certain parts of the tent. So, we tried to evenly distribute the weight on our bicycles. So if you're just doing a weekend gig and you're going to be able to find water and you don't have to sleep in a tent, I bet you can get away with about a 35-pound, 40-pound bike. And it is different than road biking. Because like we talked about earlier, I've done Ironman races, and that ultimate goal is to go on the lightest bike you can find and go as fast as you possibly can. Whereas the Great Divide mountain bike route, the journey taught me to slow down, take a lot of pictures, enjoy the scenery, enjoy nature, take it all in, take in the sights and the smells and the sounds. And I think that's something that our lives have honestly gotten so fast. Kind of nice to take a little step back to do that for yourself.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. And it's interesting, you talk about the pictures you took. You have so many beautiful pictures in your book. There's one picture that I think really stood out, and for people who are, when you just start the book, it's a picture of your shoe with all these butterflies on it. And it must have made you feel just really fabulous, having these experiences and starting the trip.
The butterfly story, I am so glad that you mentioned, out of all the pictures, that resonated with you. So the spirit of the trail is, the spirit can be whatever you want it to be. And right before we went on this bike route, a very, very dear friend of mine had passed of cancer. And she was a devout Christian, and I knew she was going to be with me somehow on the trail, but I didn't know how. And on the first day, a monarch butterfly had flown right by my face. And I felt like it was a sign from her. Her name is Bobby. And I said, oh, my God, Bobby is with me. And then 2 days later, we went through a field that had the monarch butterflies had just bloomed. And there were at least 1,000, if not 2,000, and they were all over me. And they went at least 15 miles on my arms, on my hat, on my legs, on my shirt, and most particular on my feet. And I took that picture, and just so you know, in my head, Bobby is just giving me a sign from heaven. And that's when it really came together for me that the spirit is what you make of it and what you see and what you have in your heart and your soul. So very, very special. And thank you for bringing that up. That's a very special time for me.
Oh. Well, and so many people can relate to that. When we have loved ones that have passed, we kind of look for the signs that they're still with us. And what a beautiful sign to get,
I feel the same way. I have another friend who passed, and she told her children and her grandchildren right before she passed that every time they found a penny on the ground, it was her, and to think of her. And I thought that was so special because I think of all the times I now see a penny, on the ground, and I pick it up because I know somebody special out there is thinking of me.
Aww. Well, and so during this whole trip, what were some of the things that maybe kind of surprised you as you were going along?
Oh, I was surprised how sore I was and how much it hurt. Again, I'm pretty tough, and I've done a lot of Ironman, and I would say, when we got done with this, it was like doing Ironman 46 days in a row. And to compare and contrast, when you do a full Ironman, I did Ironman in 13 hours and 40 minutes. We always had a 13-hour day almost every single day on this trail. From, when you got up in the morning to where you broke down your tent to where you got on the trail to where you got to your next campsite and you pitched the tent and then you finally got dinner. That's about 13 to 14 hours. In Ironman, once you finish, it's done. In Ironman, when you finish, you're going out to dinner. In Ironman, you're getting X, Y, Z, including a shower. When we would finish the Great Divide Mountain Bike route, there was no shower. We bathed in a stream, or I took a baby wipe shower. There wasn't always fresh water, and we'd have to purify our water. There wasn't fresh food. There wasn't a family or friends to cheer me on at the end. Every day we was just kind of a little solitude, like, okay, that day's done. And not that it wasn't amazing, but it was so dang hard. And the surprise is how mental it was. If we didn't have each other, we watched a lot of solo people drop out along the way, and I can totally understand, because if John and I honestly didn't have each other to support each other, we couldn't have done it. It's too hard mentally. And we've met people along the trail since, and we always ask them how they do it, and they said it's really, really hard. They find themselves homesick and calling home all the time. So I had my best friend with me on the trail, and I had somebody to talk to. There's a lot of time on the trail when you're biking. You actually bike in silence for a good amount of time. And then these new and interesting thoughts come to you. And then you have this really deep, honest conversation with hopefully your best friend. And that was really, really special to me. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to do that again for that long of a period of time if I don't do the trail again.
Yeah, I could imagine. I mean, if I was on a trail like that by myself, I would probably be biking. My headspace would be like, why did I do this by myself? Like, I need to bring somebody with me next time. So, having somebody there that you can share the experience with, I mean, it's just a deeper experience.
Yep.
Well, and so you've had such great experiences with this. What's the plan next? Where do you see you guys going next?
So I wrote about this in the book because what was next, and because you don't know you're going to finish. Honestly, 4 days out, we weren't sure if we were going to finish. John had a really bad sore in his leg. I was really suffering too, and we knew we only had a couple 100 miles to go, so we broke it down very, into little segments that we could, again, bite off that elephant. And we started talking about what's next. And the funny thing was, the very first thing we said is, are you going to have a breakdown at the end or not? And then the next thing was, what are we going to do next? So I'll answer what are we going to do next, and then I'll talk about the breakdown. What are we going to do next? We ended up talking about we love the trail so much, and we love being together so much and completely unplugged, that we talked about buying an RV. And the RV would allow us to go to different places in the United States and really experience life on the bike route. So when we got home, we actually John went out and found a perfect RV for us. It's just a small 24-foot RV. And that block of time I told you about, that's actually for an RV trip. And once a quarter, John and I figure out where to go, and we take our Surly mountain bikes that we bought for this trip, and we go explore. So it's taken us all the way up to the Upper Peninsula in Michigan. It's taken us down to Arkansas, which I wrote a great article, and I'm hoping this summer we have our sight set on a 700-mile mountain bike route in Idaho. It's right out of Idaho Springs, and again, it's with Adventure Cycling Association. And then I'm really hoping to get up to Alaska. I've never been to the state of Alaska, and I just think it would be an epic mountain bike ride. So that's what's next. The breakdown. So John and I are on the last day of our mountain bike, and we only have 46 miles. It's like a no-brainer. So we get up from this little town called Hachita, New Mexico, and we're biking all the way to Antelope Wells, which is at the end of the United States, and it's on the Mexican border. And about 10 or 15 miles in, I'm thinking about love. I'm thinking about the journey. I'm thinking about how much John really meant to me and all the support and all the things he did. And we had kind of had a bet to see who would cry first. And I had not cried yet on this trail. So as we got to the end of the trail, or the 10 miles in, these huge tears came down my face. And I found myself bawling. And so you know what? I said, I was ahead of John on the bike. And I said, I'm just going to stop and hug him and get off my bike and kiss him and tell him how much I love him. And as I got off my bike and I went over to kiss him, he was crying. And he had felt the same way that I did, that this was the most magical time we had ever been together. And we both just stood there and hugged each other and loved each other. And it was so special and magical to be that in tune with somebody else that you love so much. And that's how we ended our trip.
What a beautiful journey the both of you have had. I mean, my goodness, the book, The Spirit of the Trail, is just such a delightful read. And I love just you've got some amazing pictures in there, some very interesting pictures. We won't go over too much of it because we want our listeners to pick up their own copy of The Spirit of the Trail. But so where can our people, where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community?
They can they can Google Spirit of the Trail, but to be part of the community, they can follow me on Twitter. It's my name, at Carrie Morgridge. Super easy to find me. I'm in LinkedIn. They can hook up with me on LinkedIn. In fact, I just did an article for Camping World, Camping Outdoor something. And sorry, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but I post articles that I write for magazines and other things, just just as things come in or people ask questions, I'm like, oh, I've never had that question asked before. They just did an article on the top 10 things to pack before you go on your adventure on your bike. And love hearing from people. So, I'm part of Morgridge Family Foundation. Another important thing you should know, 100% of all the proceeds of the book actually go to Adventure Cycling Association. So for every book purchased, I donate 100% of those proceeds right to Adventure Cycling Association because I feel so strongly about their nonprofit work and the maps that they provide all of us. So anyone can go on Adventure Cycling Association and join that organization, and then also have access to everything that we had access to. So, but please follow me on Twitter, join my LinkedIn. I also have a very public profile on Facebook and Instagram. So whatever your mode of social media is, I think I'm on it.
That is awesome. Well, Carrie, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you, Mary Ann. This was just a delight, and I really hope that all of your readers will be inspired to go out and create their own journey.
It's been such a pleasure to spend this time with you, Carrie, and of course to talk about your new book, The Spirit of the Trail, A Journey to Fulfillment Along the Continental Divide. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Mary Ann. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Mary Ann is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Mary Ann will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Mary Ann airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmaryann.com for more information.